Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic podcast, sponsored by Rack Coach, Tip of the Spear, the Top Hopper. Use the code Top Hop to save 5% today, and Sports Workbook. And thank you to our sponsor, First Down Playbook. Use the code CFC25 to save 25% on the team membership. Today, we have Cody Alexander from MatchQuarters.com. Cody, for anybody that's watching or that's going to watch that doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from, Cody?
Yeah, I'm located in South Dallas DFW area. I've coached all the way from at Baylor as a GA with Art Briles and Phil Bennett, all the way through 5A, 6A high school football here in the state of Texas. Been doing that for about a decade. This past year, I decided to just do MatchQuarters, which is kind of my content brand. Do that full time, and that's what I've really been working on. My goal is to be a resource for fans, coaches, and make the complex game of football simple. I feel like, one gift that I've been able to receive from God is that I for whatever reason, I can, take the casual fan can find something in an article all the way through to I have NFL and college coaches that follow me and just kind of get something out of it. So to me, I'm just trying to pay it forward from what I've been, blessed to be able to have. And just kind of do that and become a resource for defensive coaches and fans all over.
Yes, sir. So, you've coached pretty much all levels of football, and this year you took the leap of faith of getting out of coaching and just focusing on your content. And how has that been? Have you missed coaching? And we want to get into your Twitter because I think you have one of the best Twitters, in the world. But how has that been this year, Cody?
Yeah, I miss the kids the most, the relationships with the kids. That's been the most. But I've got 3 kids at home. It's being able to just kind of watch football and study what I want to study and not necessarily have that time suck of I need to get this game plan together. I need to make sure, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm one of those guys. I'll just work and I just won't stop. And so it's been really nice. Been really nice to just take a deep breath and kind of just watch football. It's really funny. I was really scared to do it just because I thought, my whole identity is wrapped in just being a coach. And so my dad really encouraged me to get out and do it. And so to me, it's been a blessing. I got to go to London last summer and do a clinic there in England. And then I just got back from Germany a couple months ago. Got to go to the Combine this year with the Big Data Bowl, which is their big kind of their math analytics Super Bowl competition that they put on during the Combine. So it's been just a tremendous blessing to me and my family and the people that follow me who have been doing this now for 7 years. It's been awesome to see that kind of growth and the continued growth.
Yeah, so Jim Tim is from Rochester, New York, and he went to East Stroudsburg. And he says, God the glory with his grace. And he asks you, he's watching live. He watches almost every podcast. What was your coaching philosophy? And he also wants to know your strengths and weaknesses.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say my philosophy is that it's players first. That's my philosophy. I have a set and a belief in a certain system. But my objective every offseason was to challenge that system, see if I can't come away with something different, a better way of teaching, because at the end of the day, it's the players that are making the plays. It's not the coaches. I can put them in good position. I've got to be able to have a toolbox that's big enough to give them something. I think my strength is just being a teacher and communication. I think that to me has kind of always been a gift that I've had, is I have a gift to communicate. I'm not afraid to speak in front of an audience. I'm not afraid to kind of talk. I can write. I can really do a good job of teaching. I think that's why a lot of guys like my stuff, is because it's a different way of thinking. Weaknesses, I'm probably impatient. That's probably my biggest one. You're not going to find me coaching my 9-year-old flag football team anytime soon. That's kind of been like, if any head coach were to tell you, like, the freshmen in the JV kind of give me every once in a while. I got to be a little bit more patient with them, because you can't just. It's like, can't swim and then you just throw them in the deep end a little bit sometimes. So it's been really good for me. always have, especially in Texas, you have to coach JV at most programs. So, doing that and helping out those guys has always helped me in the past 10 years kind of grow as a coach.
Yeah, no doubt. My weakness is geometry. I can't pick out any state on a map. That's a joke. But I'm just
Yeah, I
saying
got
that
you. Yeah,
I didn't even know that Rhode Island was near Boston. I thought Rhode Island was near Delaware. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. So anybody that watches this podcast knows I'm not good at geography. I mean, heck, I don't even know the states. But you're from Texas, and I love Texas. I love the Texas high school football chat guys. They're the best. So I asked you, like, for somebody like me that doesn't know anything about match quarters, I'm pretty much an 8-man front, single safety guy. I mean, how could someone like me that's single safety, how can I kind of wrap my brain around that's not very big on match quarters? How can you explain it to me and like pretty much knowing cover 3 and cover 1?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to describe quarters in the way that I relate it back, especially when I'm looking at cover 3 stuff, single high stuff, is that it's a weak rotation defense. And, you can get rotations out of quarters. For me, that's where I look at it and I mesh it. The easiest way, like if you're from a 3-match world and you're trying to relate it back to quarters, the key to that is bracket coverage. So like if you've ever saving cover 7 bracket, bracket the slot, nickels on the outside leverage, where if slot goes inside, safety's going to nail down on him. Otherwise the nickels got him all up and out. So if you look at it that way, instead of pushing the safety to the middle of the field, you now are just keeping them front side. And so that's kind of where you can get that weak rotation of a defense. The same thing that quarters is going to look kind of the same way. You create layers. It's just you're doing it from the top down. You can create a bunch of different tags to make it look like middle of the field closed. And the way that you teach a safety is the way that I've been teaching the safety since I've been doing it is always, we are going to close the post unless we get a direct vertical threat. So to me, if I'm a cover 3 guy and I'm like, look, I need to get into quarters, but I don't want to just run country spot zone stuff because we're going to get eaten alive. Think of it, all your weak rotation stuff, you're just playing it from the table and you're keeping that safety to the front side of the hash and instead of actually closing the hash right at the snap.
Okay, right on, Coach. I don't know if you've been following Coach Jim McNally on Twitter, but I'm the guy that got Coach McNally on Twitter. It took me an hour to change his profile picture. Somebody else has asked him to start a YouTube, and I tried to explain to this guy, Coach McNally did not even know YouTube existed until I met him 2 months ago. And he still never watched a YouTube video. He has no clue what YouTube is. All right. So when did you become aware that Jim McNally was on Twitter?
He followed me, I want to say maybe 6 weeks to 2 months ago. And I was like, I know that guy. And so I've just kind of been watching him do his thing. It's unique. It's funny. I mean, I like it. It's good. It's good stuff. But yeah, I think it was about 2 months ago. I noticed that he started popping up.
Yeah. So he's on Twitter and he's gotten into some Twitter beefs. He's had some controversy. He's met the trolls. What advice could you give Coach McNally about these troll accounts, these fake coaches that aren't really like real people, but they're like hiding behind accounts?
I've been doing this for 7 years, and I think at the end of the day, a lot of these fights that people are picking, it's not worth the time. I'm in the education business. I'm in the idea business. If you want to have a civil discourse or you want to talk ideas, because here's the deal. I'm not like a lot of guys. I'm not anchored to anything. I am a quarters guy, but that doesn't mean I'm not opposed to running cover 3 or that I'm not even going to learn it. So it's not like it's black or white for me. I try and stay away from always and never situations. So my advice for anybody that's on Twitter or is trying to get into content creation or wants to kind of brand their program is like, look, you're always going to have crazies on there. It's really easy to get behind a keyboard and say whatever you want. but nobody's ever going to know your context. Nobody's going to ever tell your story other than you. Everybody's going to have it from an outside looking in. And my thing is that if you try and answer everything, you're just going to end up exhausting yourself. If people want to have an actual conversation, then have that actual conversation. Look, you can't make everybody like you. And as somebody who needs affirmation, that's kind of something that I need. Like, that's part of who I am. It's really hard putting myself out there on Twitter every day, because a lot of times you'll get some people that don't agree with you. But I think at the end of the day, you got to be yourself and be genuine. And if you are, and you're positively focused and you're helping people out, a lot more people will be on your side than against you. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'm going to present your Twitter. I just wanted you to go through some things. I think you could probably, if you go to your screen and make the percentage bigger, I think it will make.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that has really.
Yeah, it looks good. If you, maybe go a little bit bigger, it'll get rid of the one on the right. There you go. Now we're talking. There you go. That's good. So, yeah, just take us through, man. Like, I mean, if you have an hour, I'd like to just, go through all this stuff and talk about what you're studying, because, I mean, this is the stuff that you think is important. This is the stuff that's relevant. I mean, you spend a lot of time. How much time do you spend on all this stuff that you post?
Yeah, I probably spend every morning. My work schedule is I get to my office around 7:30, and then I'll probably spend all the way up until 10:30, probably about 3 hours putting together content that I had curated the day before. You can usually tell what I'm studying, because I'll find things that I'm interested in and I'll just post them and explain them. And then usually it'll show up in a post, and about, something relating to that will show up in a post about, or a Substack article within the next couple months, just depending on what I'm looking at. Sometimes I'm trying to find answers. Sometimes I'm just interested in what that team's doing. So like today, I got asked the difference between Mars and Mercury in the Saban system. Mars is an off-ball simulated pressure with 2 men behind it. And then Mercury is actually the one hole. So this is actually Mercury right here. It's the same Mars path, but the Mercury make it look like 2 men. And then the safety actually snaps down into the hole. So you end up getting a rat instead of a 2-man. So that was something I got today. And then Venus is just a 5-0 presentation, however you want to line them up. So like, I'll do that. I'll get stuff. And then I actually have an article of it. The guy that ran the third down for Oregon State last year is a good friend of mine. He's now at Oregon, BMAC. So Coach BMAC. So I try and watch my friends as they coach. Been watching Iowa. I always watch Iowa because I am a quarters guy, and it's just, there's something appealing about just a 4-3 quarters defense. It's just kind of like, it's like being at home. It's like that security blanket for me. So I always watch Iowa every year. I may not talk about them. I may not do an article on them. But I kind of did about a 6-minute deal on how shallow is covered by quarters, because there was a beautiful clinic clip that I have together. And I put it on YouTube. So I do that. And then I just defining formation in the boundary or formation in the sideline, however you put it. I think the biggest thing, this actually talks about what do you do when the ball is not on a hash. And so the way that I define it is that if the tackle is on the hash, and so in this, we have a 2x2 by Michigan. If the tackle is on the hash and the running back is to that side, then we would consider that formation into the boundary. And so I'm just kind of going over in this, just kind of, it's a little clip, but the larger video you can see on YouTube. And so I watch a lot of, we were talking before the show. I watch a lot. I'm a Broncos fan, but my goal every offseason is to learn a system. And so last year I really focused on the Aranda system, learning kind of their creeper pass and naming structures and how they do that. I'm always looking for new ways of learning. And the year before that, I tried to learn the Georgia system. Really kind of nail it down, get at least dangerous in the sense that I know Saban. I tell people when people ask me about it, I'm like, I know enough to be dangerous. I'm not an expert at anything, but I try and learn it. So this year's focus has been the Fangio system, especially at the NFL level where he's kind of exploding. So this is in the Fangio terms, quads is his quarters on both sides. And so I try and find examples of that and put that up so people kind of can learn the language as I'm learning the language. So here you can see we have a 3-2 push. Mike ends up getting in the window of the tight end, almost makes a pick right here. So I like that. You can see too with the movement. I like the safety stair step, and he ends up cutting off the deep cross on the other side. Great job by the corner climbing on the numbers right there. So I try and find good clips, some bad. I talk good and bad about every scheme. So that's kind of my thing. This is a popular pressure or a popular coverage within Evero. When you think of the Fangio system, you think a lot of cover 3. You don't necessarily think of a cover 1, but the Broncos ran a good amount of it because they had cover 1 corners. They have two good safeties. So the way that he structures it is a little bit different. I'm obsessed with language and how I'm a writer. So I'm obsessed with language and how they teach it and how different people use it. So this was an example of the Fangio cover 1 language. Lurk means that we're going to have a linebacker as a rat. Hole means the safety's getting down. And then robbers is like one funnel that you see. So it's just kind of, I'm always interested in how people name things. Because for me, I never want to assume people know my language. So I try, my goal is to be like the Rosetta Stone of defense. Like I want to know enough again to be dangerous, or enough to be able, if I'm talking to someone, I can say, well, have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of this? And then once I can figure out where your language structure comes from, then I can have a better conversation. I just feel like I'm going to meet you at, very anti-American there of learning a different language. But that's kind of what I'm trying to do is learn as many languages as I can. I think it makes you a better teacher. I think it gives you more context for when you talk to other people. You can meet them kind of in the middle ground where they're coming from. And so I think it's important.
And it's also, it's a history thing.
Yes.
I mean, because you know someone's history. I mean, who did Fangio learn from? I mean, you probably know.
Yeah, it's actually Jim Mora. And in fact, it's funny. I was on Instagram and I got a DM from Coach Jim Mora, his son at UConn, and he was asking me about, Fangio system and all that. He's like, he worked for my dad and he did. If you Google Vic Fangio, you go look at his Wikipedia, you can see that he worked for Jim Mora Sr. For years and years. And then, obviously he's had stops with Baltimore during the late 2000s, and that there's a lot of stuff, a lot of influence in that. And then obviously he's been around some really good coaches, and he's been a great coordinator really for the past 20 years. It's just what makes him unique in terms of history is the fact that he is doing things from a too high shell, which is unprecedented in NFL history. It's been
why is it unprecedented?
Run game. I really think that's why. I mean, think about it. If you talk to anybody, quarters, we're running the ball. If we get too high, we're running the ball. And I think that now we've come full circle in the NFL. We finally, the spread won. I always go back, like you talk about history, 2018. You go back to the 2018 season. That's when the spread won. That's when it broke. Football was broke in 2018. That's what happened. That's that year that we had the crazy like LA Chiefs game that was like 50 something to 40 something, which never really happened in the NFL. And so you see the quarters. I did a post on a while back on I took all the quarters data from PFF from the past 5 years. If you go back to 2018, there was less than 3,000 snaps of quarters in the NFL. And then that just ballooned 2019, 2020, 2021, 22. And that thing, it just keeps going up.
Is that because, like, when I think of MatchQuarters, I think of like Dave Wannstedt, Jimmy Johnson, and, trying to get 9 guys in the box because of 21 personnel and reading number 2. Is it because the run game, because of the RPOs, or why are they running more quarters in the NFL now?
I think it's twofold. I think if you talk to anybody that like, okay, if we have a running quarterback run game option, things like that, what do we need to be doing? We're probably going to be in a too high structure, probably going to play some quarters. And so I think it's twofold. It's not the 9-man spacing of like Narduzzi style, like blitz coverage stuff. It's not like that. I think what it is it's a meshing of we're going to play everything from the table. I think, I just got done the past 3 weeks. I've put out this will last ending with last week. I put a 3-part series on kind of the diaspora of the Fangio system and why it has become so important within the NFL. And I part of that talks about the leverage of the safeties now. Think about the NFL and the Shanahan, the McVay systems that are the popular systems right now. Deep crossing routes, pre-snap motions, change of strength motions, layering your zones against the defense. What are things, how do you combat that? I think most people understand the cover 3 killer is that deep crossing route. Is we're going to run deep cross. We're going to run it in between your intermediate coverage and your single high safety, and we're going to throw it where you're not. And if you don't get that vertical drop from the backside, your first to fourth defender, or we push somebody out and he's gone, now we have an inside linebacker that's going to have to robot onto a deep cross. And if that deep cross is Tyreek Hill, you're probably going to be in trouble. So how do you leverage that? You leverage that by using some weak rotations, which then plays into your quarter systems. And so your quarter systems also allow you to build layers in the upper intermediate and deep, not in your low intermediates like you would have in cover 3. So I think it's more or less a structure. Teams are countering that with quarters, and not necessarily just cover 4, but mixing in these cover 6 looks, which the Fangio system has a whole family on how they set the cover 2 side. It's not always to the passing strength or away from the passing strength or to the nickel. It can be away from the. So I think, to me, the reason why more teams are going to it is running quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks, the RPO game in the NFL, whether you want to call it RPO or play action. It is a bigger element within the game now. I think, too, a quarter structure at least gives you evenness in the back end, which helps you with change of strength motions, which helps you with quick motions. And so I think that is why you're seeing more and more teams run it. And what I think is more interesting is now that people are becoming more familiar with it, you're getting kind of into my kind of nerd out world where you have these tags. I call them safety spokes, where you can take these safeties and you can put them in different places. So to me, that is kind of where we are in the NFL.
Yeah, right on, man. Man, you're so sharp, man. I mean, it's impressive,
I appreciate it. I could go on to that for like hour. We could do.
Yeah, I mean, we could, like you said, you've been studying it for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean, you probably spent a lifetime.
Yeah, I thought I got asked this just going through. This is actually the heat chart of Patrick Mahomes, so it goes back to kind of that everybody's running it too high shell. If you notice this is all under 5 yards. That's where everything is going. So the Chiefs heading into this year, I had somebody comment on something about this, was like, well, yeah, but is this really good defense? That the bend and don't break mentality. And again, as a defensive guy, solve problems with aggression, meet them at the line of scrimmage. Every play needs to be for a negative light. We want to knock them back, finish going to our end zone, all that great stuff. I think what has happened with like the Chiefs, for instance, everybody has figured out, let's just get in a too high shell and make them dink and dunk. Now, not every offensive coordinator is willing to just sit there and throw a 5-yard pass every single down. They want to take the shot. They want to give it out. And so that's what this is kind of alluding to, is that, hey, everybody is playing the Chiefs this way. Going into the season this year, that was kind of a big thing of everybody was asking, like, okay, how are the Chiefs going to react? Because the year prior, and yes, the Chiefs did win the Super Bowl, so I think they figured it out. But the year prior, people were like, oh, Mahomes didn't have that great of a year. Well, I think that's another thing. Football, we are, and especially in society today, we want everything to happen now, right? Like we want everything to happen, instantly. We want that instant gratification. Well, look, they were the number one offense. So everybody kind of figured it out and said, okay, well, we can use blanket coverage. You don't get the shot plays anymore. We're going to play everything from too high. So all your deep crossing routes, we're going to have them bracketed on the front side and the back side. We can kind of play. I think of it like if you ever go to a bowling alley and you have the safety bumpers. That's what they were creating. So even though you're going deep, we're bouncing it off the safeties. We're going to have leverage on you. So now they had to go back to. Now, I think what they did this year, which was really good, is get into some 12 personnel looks, 21 personnel, 30, even 22 personnel looks, get you in your base defense. And then we're going to find that mismatch, whether it's with Kelsey, whether it's with our receivers, or you're going to guess wrong and you're going to be in your lighter hybrid packages. And now we're just going to run the ball right at you. So I thought that's kind of where that came from. Let's see, that's another Broncos. This is a popular call. It's like I said, I'm learning the Fangio system, so I'm trying to put it out there. This is the penny whiskey, usually paired with a cover 9. Cover 9 in the saving in the Fangio sense is a weak rotation. So this would be like your save and cover 6 stuff.
So have you ever had a coach come to you and say, hey man, you need to knock it off. You need to stop putting my stuff out there? Or, because I was just wondering, because this is pretty detailed what you're doing right here.
Yeah, I don't. One of the things that I have always prided myself on is I'm not going to ever put anything out there that isn't already out. And that's what allows me to have access. I get to go to do a lot of cool things. I get to talk to a lot of interesting people. That doesn't mean I need to put it on Twitter. I think that's the difference between somebody that's just looking for that dopamine hit of getting the like versus what I'm trying to do. So all of this information is kind of just out there.
Okay.
And especially like for instance, like the Georgia stuff that I showed earlier, that playbook's been out for 4 years now. Most people have seen it. And they've already changed all the names. So it's not like I'm putting any information out there that's not there. I have a lot of friends that are coordinators at big time programs. People from the NFL follow me, things like that. I never put that in there. So I think I got one time Coach Bennett told me, and it was right when I started out. I started talking about they had played SMU and they had gone to a 3-down front, and I had kind of written about something about it, and he was like, "Hey, cut it out." So other than that, that was like one time. But no, I don't get coaches because I'm not putting I'm trying to put it in an educational sense, or like a generic isn't a good word, because if you do generic, I don't want to put it simplistic, but I try and make it as simple as possible. More of an an educational setting, and not necessarily like, hey, here's a playbook. I'm not into that. I'm not into posting playbooks. That's not what I do. I'd rather draw it up on my own like this. This is my own drawing.
Because this is how you really learn. You really learn by putting all this together and presenting it and teaching it to others.
Right. So that's, to me, the best way to learn is to teach. And so I learn it. I put it in my own, I love these hyper visuals. I'm not.
Yeah, explain those to me, because I see those on your Twitter. Explain it to me, because I like you said, words and pictures, and people learn different ways.
Right. So there's conflicting things, but about 60, depending on where your setting is, about 60 to 80% of learners are visual learners. And so I'm really big, even in teaching schematics and things like that. I call them visual cues. So I'm going to give you, I may be using a word, which is a cue, but it's going to have a visual connotation to it. So I want that, even though I'm talking to you in words or I'm writing something down, I want to create an image in your mind. So that way, even though I may not be able to present an image like this, I can still give you an image in your mind, and that's going to help you learn it a lot quicker than if I just were to write it down. I think if you spend the time to create visuals, I think kids these days want to see things. They pop. They're used to seeing things. They're used to getting, a lot of visual cues. And 2, these hyper visuals, this is probably not a great example of one, but you have multiple things, like red means I'm rushing, blue means I'm in the coverage, green is saying, okay, these are the things that we're using. It's the penny front, so I put a penny. It's whiskey, so I put Jack Daniels in there. It's whip coverage, which is it's their bonus drop fire zone coverage. And then red is like, oh, I probably need to know this stuff. A lot of the colleges, they have staffs to do this, so they do a lot of this stuff. I might be able to find one. Here's a good one. So this is Newton 2 roll. This is a non-traditional Tampa. So I'm showing you where the coverage geometry is, right? These are your triangles that we've built because we're playing cover 2. Cover 2 is a triangle. So we're putting triangles. It's a nickel pressure. So it's probably coming, for the most part, it's coming from the field. And so I highlighted the field in yellow. And then, hey, alert, we want to show single high, and then we're going to move to our non-traditional Tampa, bounty, double roll, 2 roll, 2 ply, however you want to do it. I could have put toilet paper in there too, but I just found the bounty one. I thought it was nice. And then NTT, I'm just kind of, hey, this is information. Green is information. NTT, non-traditional Tampa. I used to nerd out when I was at Baylor. I used to do all the different personnels were different color groups, and the tight end was always in yellow. The running back was always in red. Fullbacks were always blue. And I thought, and kind of experimenting with it, it brings your eyes. So if I'm looking for a tight end, I know that it's going to be yellow when I was making my hit charts and things like that. So I've always kind of been like this. So that's kind of been something that I enjoy doing, these hyper visuals. I call them hyper visuals. Here we go. Here's a really good one. So CAR is a corner pressure. It's from the boundary. So I highlighted the boundary. So it's a hash call. And so D into the blitz, D into the call side. What does a wedge technique look like? Here's the pressure. And then I give the face to it, so you have the visual. So those are all the things that I've kind of I really like doing these. I think it helps people learn.
What program do you use to draw that?
So I use PowerPoint. I'm on a Mac, so I have PowerPoint. A lot of guys like Visio. So if you have a hard top, like a desktop, or you have a Microsoft computer, you can use Visio. I'm just cheap, so I don't want to pay for Visio. It's expensive, and you can do most of the same stuff on PowerPoint. And then I use Pro Quick Draw to kind of create a better workflow. Since I've already had a lot of my drawings already done, I can kind of pull different things, change them really quickly, and then put them into different presentation formats.
Right on.
Yeah, these are something that I think people have found. I've been using coverage data, talking a lot about it. So this is the Bengals coverage data from last year. You can see quarters. The caveat to this is, though, because of tags, a lot of this PFF stuff is not necessarily accurate. And I found that out when I was doing my Jets study. I actually was told that the Jets ran way more quarters than they were actually set on PFF. So take everything with a grain of salt that you see from there.
When you say PFF, what does that mean?
Pro Football Focus. That's it's Chris Collinsworth's company from NBC. They take data. They actually, it's kind of cool what they do. They break down the plays just like you would for your team, but they do it at a little bit of a higher level, have a little bit more nuance with the data. But then they also use tracking data. So every NFL player has a GPS in them, in their shoulder pads. And if you've ever been to a major college campus, it's that catapult stuff. It's similar to the same thing. It's like a little disc. It's in the back of their shoulder pads, or they're wearing it underneath their shoulder pads. It's what those little sports bra looking things are that you see guys wearing sometimes at the college level. And they will, they can track it. It's the dot. Have you ever seen the dots?
I only saw the dots when you showed the Mahomes thing.
Right. Go ahead.
I mean, pretty much this will show like pre-snap where they were and then post-snap where they ended up, right?
Yeah, and they can track that. And they have that data. And so what they do is, it's actually pretty cool. Like if you work for a Power 5 school.
I mean, it's an algorithm. They could probably tell whether it's man-to-man or man-free or –
yes,
right?
and they work on that is part of that's the next step, and that's what a lot of guys like. I do I do some stuff with StatsBomb, who is actually they're really big in Europe in soccer, but they're making headway here in the United States with football using their tracking algorithm that they have for soccer and kind of tweaking it for football, because in football it's a collision sport, so people are a lot tighter together, but creating drawings off of where people movement, so you can draw more accurate routes. You can really draw more accurate conclusions on certain schemes and certain ways people are playing things. So it's just more information, better information to make yourself scout and your opponent scout quicker.
Yeah, man. So what you got there? You got Iowa?
Yeah. So again, this is just mesh technique is something that you'll hear, man accept short. So it's a soft press technique. I'm a DB guy. I'm a cornerback nerd. I like corner play. I think it's fascinating. I think the corner coach and the O-line coach are some of the two most technical positions that you've got to know. And so I think it's just and they mirror each other a lot with the way the foot placement, hand placement, eye placement, where are you going to be, leverage, and all that thing. I know, and I think a lot of people don't see it that way, but there's so much meshing of technique and of thought process for O-line as there is for corner play. But I like to break anytime I can find some good quarters technique or some good corner technique. I am. So here I'm just breaking down what is mesh technique, man accept short. So it's a soft or a passive press. I try and break everything down into an off, a passive, and an aggressive. So mod for me in my language is man outside deep or man on demand. That's going to be off coverage, right? So we're 6 yards inside eye playing off, even though it's similar to quarters is basically man with rules. So it's corners are essentially playing off man. Mesh technique is we're going to be in a soft press, so a yard to a yard and a half. We're going to feather, mirror motor, all that good stuff. If the receiver wants to run across the field right now, we're not going to chase him. We're going to zone off on that. But Meg, man, everywhere he goes, that's an aggressive. That's hard press, lock, get my clamps on him, lock on him, be aggressive at the line of scrimmage. And then if he starts to run away from me, I'm running with him wherever he goes on the football field. He can run whatever kind of crazy 7-on-7 or 1-on-1 route that we all see during, this time of year. I don't care what it is. If it's Meg, you better be following. So that's kind of how I structure the language that I have in my coverage system. And so that's just kind of me going over the mesh technique with that.
Is quarters a man zone or is it a zone man?
I think it's man for the DBs and it's zone for the linebackers. Now, the difference between my system that I've created that it stems from, you mentioned it earlier, Jimmy Johnson, Dave Wannstedt. Well, that's where Phil Bennett worked for. That's who he worked for in Pitt, brought it to Baylor. That's where I learned it. And then through 10 years of me coaching at the high school level, teaching all different kinds of athletes, I think there's really been 1 year where I had Division I corners. So just being and applying that to different looks and different linebacker structures and how we're doing that, creating a system for that. So where I'm a little different, like if you were to look at, I think the easiest one that a lot of people know about is the Saban Cover 7 system, which is a man match system. I don't want necessarily my nickel turning and running with number 2 vertical. I want him to be more of a basketball player. I want him to punch the hip with the outside hand, basketball, make him go around you. Safety's going to cap it. The safety's in the corners. I want DBs guarding receivers. That's what they're there for. I want the underneath players playing zone, eyes to the quarterback, passing things off, communicating. Those are going to be your zone defenders. I try and ride that line as much as I possibly can between man match and zone match. And so even though we are split field coverage, we're not going to chase things all the way across the field unless our rules dictate that. So to me, that's where I think quarters, if you were to go and look at Pitt, Narduzzi style, 9-man spacing, that's Meg quarters. That's 4-lock. That's man. That you're playing man coverage, and then your backers are just kind of dropping the spots. I'm kind of in a little bit in between. I try and do things with a 6-man box, get the nickel covered down so we don't get the RPOs. You know, I coached in Texas for pretty much all of my career. And so the RPO game, quarterback play is always really good here. So you have to be really creative with how you fit the box, how you do things. It's funny, some of the stuff that I'm hearing now coming out of some of these top programs at the college level, it's like, well, man, I mean, I learned that was like day one install for us at Baylor, like, 10 years ago. So it's just interesting now how cyclical football is and kind of how my philosophy now matches up with a lot of things that are going on at the higher levels.
Yeah, right on. So you got Dak Prescott there teaching creepers.
Yes. So this is kind of the new thing that I think a lot of people are interested in is, okay, I'm a 4-down front guy, or I'm an odd front guy. I've been living in the tight front. Everybody's kind of figured it out now. Or I'm a 4-2-5 guy. Everybody's kind of figured it out now. I think pretty much offense is now, if you stay in a static front or you stay in a static coverage, everybody pretty much knows what you're doing. So how can I bring in even spacing, which has bubbles, and then put in odd spacing with it? So no bubbles. Well, this is Dak. We call it Dak because I live in Texas. Dak's number 4. 4 has an F in it. So that's because I always get asked, Dak doesn't make any sense. I would say, you're right, but it makes sense to kids in Dallas because Dak is number 4. 4 has an F in it. Dak is the field B gap pressure. It pairs with Brady. So just in before the guys like Dak isn't an F word. So I think if you look at this, you have created a tight front. So Mike is charging the B gap. We're getting the A gap closed. The opposite B gap is closed. The will is now an A player and your C gap player is the defensive end. So your A to C structure is there. So you're getting an even presentation, but post snap, I'm switching to odd spacing. So now your blocking schemes that you thought what everybody right. That's like the offensive coordinator 101. They salivate when you give them an even front. They know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to run their little ISOs and their little G wraps and their zones and all that stuff is going to look great against it. Well, post snap, I'm now in odd spacing. So all your little zone stuff it's not going to be great against this. I like B gap pressures because it gives you kind of the best of both worlds. I'm creating a odd presentation post snap. So your zones are going to get kind of messed up. But if you want to run a gap scheme, I'm either going to end up chasing the polar or I'm going to punch it in the mouth. And so I like B gap pressures to gap schemes. Like if you're playing a gap scheme team and you're like, well, I want to run some of these creepers or I want to run some of these pressures. What are the good ones? B gap pressures are great. C gap pressures, because again, it goes back to what's the best zone read beater? Everybody runs NCAA fire zone, right? You get your dive player, quarterback pulls it. Oh crap, there's the looper. He punches them right in the mouth. Well, if you do C gap pressure, so those would be in my language, that's Breeze and Fields. If you run those, now you get that same structure, but you have a 4-man presentation. And so this again goes back to what we talked about with hypervisuals. So there's a lot going on. So wherever you are, hey, this is what I'm looking at. We have our coverage triangles. Hey, this is where I'm fitting. Oh, hey, this is the ends now in coverage. We can swipe tag it. We can tell them peel alert. We can have them drop into the vertical hook or what I call the glance window. We have the middle hole player. So we have all these different things. I break down the read pop side, the wedge side. I call it wedge because we're wedging the tackle. You can see the nose and the D end are both stepping to the tackle. We're creating a wedge on the tackle. I actually think of creepers because I'm a DB guy. I think of creepers like split field coverage. Mm-hmm. So you have a pressure side and then you have a read pop side or a wedge side. And so what I did when I was trying to conceptualize this, because when my last stop I was at, we were not very good, but we had to play some of the best teams in the state. We had kids that weren't playing football probably up until their freshman year. So we were kind of behind the 8 ball. I needed a movement defense because we couldn't play sit and get. So I needed a way to teach these advanced concepts like this without spending a lot of time capital, because that was another thing that we didn't have. Where we were at was very non-traditional Texas high school. Our athletic period was only going to be about 45 minutes. It's going to be in the middle of the day. We don't have an indoor. We didn't have all this extra time. We didn't have block scheduling. So we needed to be able, and all of our players play both ways. So we needed to be able within an hour practice and maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes in our athletic period to be able to teach these complex things. So what I did, I was like, look, what if we just taught it like split field coverage? What if we have a pressure side? So the defensive end just needs to know, am I a cop or am I a rip? The interior lineman to that is always going to cross the noses. That he's going to have a nose stunt. So he's always going to try and cross the center's face. Well, on the other end, if I'm not to the call side, I'm on the wedge side. And so we only had to teach them only a few things. So it's kind of that I think of it like Eli Whitney, taking another history term, and the interchangeable parts. So we're taking a B gap pressure, a B gap dog with the mic right here. So this technically would be a mob stunt. So if I just wanted to run dog, so 5-man pressure, we just call mob. Well, if it's mic to B, the defensive end knows he's got a cop. The interior lineman knows that I got to get out of the way. So you either got to get out of the gap or you got to go around the gap. And so that's how we did it. And I felt like the kids really responded well. We knew what we were doing. We were outmatched, but for the first half, we looked really good. We got a lot of run throughs, but didn't make a lot of plays. And a lot of that, again, it goes down to who you have playing. But I wanted to make sure that these kids, and I've always wanted this, I don't care where you're at, coach those kids just as like they're going to be the ones that are going to college.
Mm-hmm.
Because my thing is I never want a kid to come back and be like, Coach, I felt like you could have coached me harder, or you didn't coach me hard enough. I think the biggest compliment I ever got was from a kid that knew he was never going to play. And he came back. This was a couple years after he had graduated, and I ran into him somewhere, and he was like, Coach, you always made sure that we were ready to play, whether we were the guy that was never going to play or the guy that was going to play. You always took the time to make sure that everybody was ready to go and that we all had the information available to us. And so to me, that's what I want. So that's rewarding. And then when you have your college kids, they go to college and it's their first week on campus and they call you back and they say, Coach, all of this stuff makes sense because it's all of the stuff that you taught us. And so to me, that's what I want. I want to be able to give these kids the best teaching that they can. And so now that I'm not coaching, I'm trying to give that to the coaches. I want the coaches out there to have the best coaching, because look, Twitter didn't exist when I was coming up. So all this cool stuff that you can't learn. And some, I'm blessed because I live in Texas, and where I live in Dallas, I'm an hour away from North Texas. I'm an hour away from Baylor. I'm 30 minutes from SMU. I'm 45 minutes from TCU. If I want to go visit a college campus, I can. And it's very easy for me to do that. Not every state in this country and not every college in this country is open to high school coaches or open to give their stuff to high school coaches. Especially some of these states that don't have a huge, large recruiting base, they're always going out of state. Well, if you're always sending all your capital out of state, sometimes your in-state high school coaches don't feel like they can go or they don't have access. So I want to make sure that, hey, I'm bringing you as much as I possibly can, what I can, to give to you so that you at least have that information. You can do with it whatever you want with it, but I want to give you a high quality teaching and how to do it.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I appreciate it. What you got for us next there? Some more Iowa?
Yeah, so this is actually Dak with 3 buzz behind it. And I like B-gap pressures are really good with cover 3 behind it. Any kind of internal pressure, I really like cover 3 behind it, especially on early downs. It just fits up really good. The puzzle piece, it looks really nice together. The puzzle pieces fit. You can get into some wacky structures sometimes when you lose when you're losing some internal guys and then you got to play quarters behind it. It can kind of get a little funky, especially like wherever your sling end is going to be. So I like this. So this was, you see you see Dak 3 buzz, and then you come back over here and then you see that. And it's interesting, a lot of people think Iowa just like 4-3, 5-man pressure, fire zones, quarters coverage, but here they are. Look at this. They're running a simulated pressure. So you gotta love that. That's why.
Yeah, I have a friend who he's a head coach and he hired a coordinator, and he was telling me that They were 4-4 cover 3 team, but the guy only blitzed the A gaps.
Yeah.
So why is like a 4-4 defense or a cover 3? Why is B gap pressure better?
I like B gap because it closes that bubble. Most guys don't want to run, and most offenses don't want to run into the A gap. Now, I know I'm going to get, well, what if you're North Dakota State and you're running A gap power, or hey, we're an under center team, we're running A gap power? That's a completely different universe. We're in a different ecosystem. I think for a lot of these, like for instance, Michigan, they're a spread to run team. This is a 10 personnel look. They bring back an 11. They make it a split zone. That split zone is most likely not going to hit in the A gap. So when you attack these B gaps, you're closing that bubble. So if you look at it, he's closing the DAC pressure is actually closing the B gap. So that bubble that was there that they like. So here, this is exactly how I would say. And again, this is why I watch Iowa. We get a 3-by-1. The 3 technique is going to be away from the 3 receivers. They're not allowing you to blitz the back, so they put them in pistol. That's another trend. The pistols come. The pistol is one of those weird things that offensive coaches can't decide if they really like it or not, because it's not very good if you want the back to get out in the pass. It's not great if you want him to block for your passing structure. But it doesn't. It forces the defense to be a little bit more formational in the way that they pressure you. So it's kind of like a give and a take. But here you're going to have, this is how I would teach this, is you have the wedge side, right? And then you're going to have the B gap pressure. Well, where is the bubble? Where is the conflict? The conflict is right here. This guy has to get into the B gap, especially if you're going to single gap that thing. So he's got to get in the B gap. That's why 3 buzz pairs well with this, because he would have to sling over here. And then now he has to stay high. So you really don't, if he never were to move, your cover down is actually right here. So you don't want to do that. You actually would, right. That's why against these spread zone teams, you're better hitting the A gaps or running kind of 3 buzz or going to the boundary. So that way you can get your full cover down. But that's why they want to close those B gaps. So really what you're doing is you've created your odd spacing here. I now have closed the B gap. I've got my A gap. He's looping back. He's tracking. They're a little different. He's actually attached to it. He should be slinging over here, but he's actually tracking the motion through in case it comes and he replaces him. We would tag that as rat it. You normally don't see that. You normally don't see it if they give you an 11 personnel presentation. But this is a beautiful way that this actually ends up as a 5-man pressure, because that defensive end is going to add in. So we call that a hover technique. And this is if you can see, it's an early down, it's first down. So I don't need him to drop. I was talking to a coach today who had put in a simulated pressures, and it's early down, and that D end just stands up, and we get that classic, fat man waddle going backwards into, spot dropping, and it's like, oh, well, you just lost your edge. So on early downs, you're better off to have that guy almost add in. Fold to the window and find it, and make sure and really make sure that guy cuts everything off and he cops or contain pressure, and let him add in. So if you really think about it, you get your number, you add your numbers in it. So that's, again, kind of long story short, that's why they close the B gap, and then that's why I have that up there. Chop, I think everybody knows this one. But this is the switch version of chop. So now we're going to get the caught by the D end, and the corner is going to come over. I call it a razor path. I think some people call it a blood path. Get to the B gap, B for blood. And so that's a cool little pressure off of that. I showed Carr earlier. Carr is the pop out by the D end with the fire zone path with the corner in the wheel. Kyler's inside, and then Carson is for us is outside. Carson's got an O in it. Kyler's got a Y inside, word association. Here is the 49ers. 49ers, I love the boss front. It's also known as an overload front. It's one of my favorite things to do. I got, when my last year at Midlothian, I ran our secondary. I've really ran the secondary everywhere I've been. But I got to do our third down calls, and we had 4 really good defensive linemen. And so we would get in this boss front, and we did all these kind of games. So anytime I see boss front stuff, I love it. And I make sure that I clip all this stuff. So I wrote my article from Monday is actually on the 49ers boss path and all their different structures that they used. This is a tech stunt. So it's not that hard. It's a presentation, right? So you don't have to do anything crazy It's just a crazy alignment. So really all this is a tech stunt. He just needs to get out of the way. So he's going to bring the center, which creates a two-man game on a two-man game. So that's what I really like about this. So you can see the nose is going to engage him and start working over here. And then we're going to get the pin and he's going to loop back around. And as he comes around, that center and this guy now don't have the angles. He's now got a better angle. Quarterback's got to step up and he ends up getting a sack. So what I like about it is everybody likes a real sexy pressure, and I draw them up and I love them too. I love to draw them, like all the crazy lines going everywhere. Kind of like the Newton non-traditional Tampa, there's lines going everywhere. It looks like Egyptian hieroglyphics. You don't have to get crazy and you don't have to do like super exotic stuff. If you already have a tech stunt, you just tag this with, hey, when we get in third down, we're going to go boss, just set which side you want it to go to. We always said, find the donkey. So where's the worst guard or worst offensive lineman? And then that's what we're going to do. If it's a tackle, I want Bosa, who's my best D lineman, ISO'd on him. So he would usually be the guy that's soloed up. If it was, hey, they're pretty solid, but we don't like their guard or their tackle. These two guys, their right side doesn't do games very well. Well, here we go. We're going to get him boss. We're going to slide that center away. Right. So the center, you can see he's sliding to the three-man side. A lot of centers, especially at the high school level, if they get a guy crossing their face, what are they going to do? They're going to grab onto it and go with it. Well, that's perfect for me, because if he grabs onto this guy, now look at this path. There's no one there to block him. This guard, who's probably not a great pass blocker anyway, is now going to have to deal with that. And so you can see if this center would have just kept going with him, look at that alley right there. And look, we didn't do anything crazy. We just ran a tech stunt. We just dressed it up with a boss front. So I think, and two, the kids love it. I mean, kids just love to do anything that's different, right? And so it's an easy thing. You're not putting a lot, you're not spending a lot out of your teaching account, right? I always think of it like an account. What's expensive? Like I'm expensive in the quarters universe. So my cover 3 is just a real simple match 3 built off bracket. Okay, well, if I'm a cover 3, I'm gonna have all the tags and all the things in that, and then we're probably just gonna play Meg quarters, right? Because it's just easy. Or what a lot of guys do is we're just gonna play cover 2 or 2 read. And so I think you got to be expensive somewhere, inexpensive somewhere else. Well, this is an inexpensive third down to manipulate it to where you can get a 3-man game that can get one of your guys free. And it also, the thing that I like about it, it isolates your best defender on the tackle. So if it's like, hey, the left tackle is their best guy, why don't we put the boss over there and make the right tackle, who's really a road grader, have to actually pass protect? And so if that's the case, yeah, we can play a game over here. A lot of teams, I'll be honest with you, a lot of teams just run the nose. They just run a nose stunt, and these guys get vertical columns. And then because they're trying to just get this guy to do some sort of up and under, and then the nose can just slide out, play natural with it. So you don't have to get, I think, again, we're talking literally a tech stunt. Everybody's got it in their playbook. Everybody does it. They teach it. It's a third down call for a lot of defenses. You're just dressing it up and you're manipulating. That's what I like about it. It's just the manipulation of it. Let's see. This is just cover 1 on an option. I like this. I just like anytime you can get a clear picture of run fits. I know I'm a secondary guy. I'm not supposed to like run fits, but I do like run fits. This is pretty cool. So what they do is they walk. This is a 4-3. This is a 4-3 like 101. Like, how can I get into a 5-man adjustment or an eagle adjustment? How can I get into this? We just walk him down. And this was something that they did against Michigan. They just walked him down. He's in what I would call a jam 6. So you're going to jam this guy and hit him thick. And then if he tries to go out, I'm just going to try and head him up. Right. And so what we end up getting is it really defines the run fit for the Mike. So if we get an arc, I'm trying to go over, really defines the run fit for him. And the rip stunt right here occupies that. So now what we end up getting is a 2-on-1. Quarterback's going to toss it. And so now we've got a nice vice tackle. And actually we got 3 men on the tackle. The guy from Michigan tackled him too. So that's anytime I can find a really good, especially against option, things that are high school coaches, for instance, can like, or what we're seeing more and more of at the college and the NFL level are always nice. So that's a good little one right there. I know I got a bunch of Iowa. You can tell I've been watching Iowa. Buddy of mine is the OQC at Wisconsin, so I'm excited to see them. Those are my boys. We go to Stars games. Blessed, my father-in-law has season tickets, so we get to go do that. Here's a good clip of the Chargers using it. I call this a stab. So going back to talking about safety spokes, we've got our too high alignment, and we're going to get a run read. You can see the backers are bossed or plussed, however you want to define that, to the 3 side, which a lot of guys do that. A lot of guys are going to boss this. Well, I'm gonna come down here. Well, if I get a run read, we're going to stab him down really quickly into that. A team that did a really good job of this within their quarter structure was the Jets. Anytime they got a reduction to the tight end, so the X and the tight end were really close, like Y off. Let's say Y off 2x2, Y's in the C. They get a reduction by the X, so the X and the Y are really close. They almost blitzed the safety down. And I call that stab. So safety to B, because we want him to hit outside in. So stab technique to get him down into the run fit. And now he's right there. And that's a easy adjustment. All we're playing too is just inverted quarters. It's by 1, so we're just going to lock him up. We've bossed everybody, so he's in what I call a taser. So we're locking the mic, or in this would be the money. We're locking the money on the tight end. And so you can see that we can still play quarters front side. Safety stays on the hash. We're playing quarters here, and then he's stabbing down. If it were to be pass, he can just roll back inside. And so if we do get a glance or off the RPO or something, or play action, he can actually get in that. I got a couple clips. If you use the search tool, you can use my you put my handle in there, and in quotations put Jets or stab, and it'll file all these. That's again too why I've tried really hard to create a language, just because, not for like an egotistical sense, but just so like when people are like, hey, do you have anything on this? I can be like, hey, just search this up and you will find all the clips, and they're all in a row. So it's more or less categorically trying to do things like that. Here's Carson. So you've seen all 3 corner pressures. You've seen Carr, which is the fire zone with the pop out. You've seen Kyler, which is the blood path, or what I call razor. And then you've seen Carson, which is a knife path. Knife, running back to me. I have quarterback, running back away, bend to back, because I don't have to worry about the quarterback pulling. So that's, again, another hyper visual showing the wedge technique, kind of giving you, it's a hash call. What are knife rules, right? D into the call side. There's your coverage triangle. All of that good stuff. You were talking about history earlier. I thought this was funny.
That's what get people trouble right there, man.
Yeah,
I mean that's what they just did, wasn't it?
Yeah. So they ran this. Well, they ran a version of this instead of him going here. They ran the text, but these are. I said, what if you could make your boss front out of the Gilded Age? So you have man stunt, so boss man, boss tweed. You got your wrap stunt. I'm not going to – it's just vertical integration, horizontal integration, but it's just funny. But, yeah, I love the boss front and all the different stuff that they do. And both of these are from my 49ers boss front. So if you go to my Substack, you can find both of these images there, and then explanations and film on them too. But I like to highlight where they're trying to attack. Anytime you can get the running back to block, that's a win. That's a win for coverage, and that's a win for whoever's going to hit that running back, because not everybody that plays running back is built to block or wants to block. It's kind of like that whole Alex Gibbs wide zone. We don't block corners, right, because they can't tackle. Well, you want to try and put 2 on the back. You want to put your best player on the back. So like what they did, they put a defensive end, and they just charged them in. Well, that's a running back. You think you take a running back, just an average NFL running back, and you put him up against an edge player that's going full speed. I'll take that edge on that. I mean, it's simple.
Micah Parsons,
right? Exactly. The Dallas will do that too. So you take Micah Parsons, you give him a full head of steam and rush. He can use rush mechanics. So you allow him to do that on a running back, game over, right? And so that's kind of where that comes from. Classic whip stunt here. One thing, the teachable thing here is this is a B gap pressure, right? Everybody's like, oh, this is just Brady, right? Well, in the NFL, you play in the middle of the field. So there really is no formation in the boundary. So everything is an S or a W. It's strong or weak. And so that's why you see whip is Brady to the boundary. It's to the weak side. So they don't have a call. A lot of these guys don't have a call structure for field boundary. Everything is off passing strength. So that's kind of the teachable moment on that one. This is my favorite 5-man pressure. This is my favorite simulated pressure versus zone. It's called Allen. The 5-man pressure is Raptors for in my language. But what you do is you take the inside linebacker away from the running back. And what we're going to do is we're going to float the center. And so all floating the center means is my interior defensive lineman is going to work to the B gap. What we want is if they are a man zone team, he's going to try and bang that nose. We want the nose to attack the face of the guard and let the center bang him into the B gap. We call it a knob, nose to B. I want him to occupy it. If they're a full zone team, you're still going to get the step to the nose as he's going across, right? And what that does is it really defines this path for this linebacker. And he's just going to do a cross technique. And you can see here he crosses over and it puts in a really nice vice tackle right here.
So that's what Coach McNally calls fallback.
Yes.
Those linebackers fall back. He says it's the biggest problem, man. And there it is.
Yes. And so this is a beautiful look at it. That's why I put it in there. I call it belly key. Because I'm an even front guy, but if you're an odd spacing world, everybody calls it fallback. And that's the thing is like, if you were to draw this up the way that it's supposed to fit, and if you think about it, what we have created is a cross dog.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like that linebacker.
It's a gap exchange. I mean, right. It ends up being a gap exchange.
Right. So it ends up looking really nice. In fact, the guy that ends up making the play is actually your 3 technique. I would like, and I'm sure the linebacker coach would tell this guy, you have to track him back. So this guy actually should be here, and the vice tackle should be between the linebacker and the safety coming down. So this is cover 3. It actually ends up being because of the 3 technique. He actually gets leverage and actually makes a play. That's Morgan Fox. So this is a beautiful vice tackle, and it's also a great play by your 3 technique and being able to rock back, and you get the gap exchange between the linebacker and the 3 technique. But that guy should be here. We should have 3 on that ball. So it's a good little illustration of that. That's one of my favorite players. So this is cover 8 and here's the thing. I don't have the play calls for this. So it's hard to tell. I just have to go off of like the basics of what I know. So cover 8 in the Fangio world is his quarter half. And we're going to get a cover 2 side and we're going to get a quarter side. So you can see right now I've got the cover 2 side over here, and they can game plan it. Like I think I said earlier, they have a call. They call it Zeus, where they can tag it. Like if this is Tyreek Hill, so this probably is a Zeus call. They probably want to play cover 2 over here because you get the double, right?
Yes, the best receiver.
Right. So we're going to play cover 2 or cone over the top receiver. And then we're going to play quarters away. So that's why when you watch Fangio, if you are an old school quarter half guy, you're going to be confused because you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, wait, the passing strength's over here. This should have turned into quarters. The cover 2 side should have been away from the passing strength. He does it completely different. He can call it and he game plans it. And so this whole system, this is Staley here. This whole system is predicated off of different things. So you can see here, we're going to get quarters and we're going to get cover 2. A nice job by the safety because it ends up being a 3-by-1. This is called a tricks. So it's his language for poach or solo. And so he's going to work to the middle of the field. And you can see how they create layers off of this. And so if he were to turn back out, you have the corner climbing. He's going to cap anything vertical. If this were to dig back over here, he would be here. And then the safety actually sees it and backdoors it right there. So it's a good little look at how he runs. That system runs their nickel, which is 4 down, and then their quarter half structure. So here's another good look at it. I think this one has a This one actually has some visuals to it.
I mean, these compressed formation, these squeezed formations that they use so much. I mean, how does that affect your defense? Do people have, like I see in high school around here, teams have a certain way that they play these compressed formations? Is that the same way in pro football?
Well, like I said, you're going to find different ways. You're going to see some that are going to be like, we're going to be really aggressive. So, like I said, the Jets are a great example. Early downs, you give me a compressed formation, I'm going to stab that safety down. We're almost going to blitz it. I mean, it's going to be violent. We're going to put him down there. I'm not going to let you crack him. If you crack him, I'm going to define the crack. Because I think if you talk to high school coaches, the worst thing is teaching a kid crack replace, right? Like, the corner is like, either I'm always locked on the man and I can never get my eyes off of him. But then when you tell them, hey, you got to get your eyes off, then it's like, now I'm only looking in the backfield. So what I like about this in the way that the Jets did it is they said, look, we're going to define it early in the down. We're going to blitz the safety down. We're going to keep our quarter straight. It's just going to turn into inverted quarters. We're going to stab him down violently into that 2x2. So if I get 2x2 and I get a reduction, I'm going to stab that guy because I'm going to make that receiver block me, and it's going to define it for that corner early in the down. And so now we're more likely to get a crack replace, or if I know he's not going to touch him, if he doesn't touch him, I know it's a play action pass, and now the safety can roll back and we have an intermediate player. Here in the trips, it's just, how are you playing the bunch? How are you doing your different alignments? Are you pushing it? So here he's going to poach it, which allows that safety to play high. Now we're going to play a 3-man game underneath on 3 men. If you get quarters or quads, now how is that going to play out? But yeah, the reductions and primarily too, like if you're a big, like I used to get in the habit of this and we got in trouble a few times. Like if you're constantly playing cover 2 to that, you have passive safeties. You are going to get, it's almost like a scrum, right? They're just going to, duo became really big the past couple of years. We're just going to go downhill run right at your 2 high safety. So you have to create ways of, whether it's through line movement or it's through stabbing the safety down. If you are going to be a quarters team, how are you going to get presence down there? And so that's kind of and this is how this ends up working. You can actually see they change it off of strength of motion. So we get this, change of strength motion. The nickel's going to work over. Now this turns into the cover 2 side. He becomes a trick safety, which allows him to go front side. So going back, if you think about it, this functions just like a cover 3 if you were to make the safety the buzz player weak, right? 6 cross, 5 cross, whatever weak cross you want, or weak buzz. That's essentially what we're doing. And in fact, people get confused when Fangio talks, and some of these guys talk about his coverages, because he uses rotation as a term that even in his quarter schemes. So when people hear rotation, you automatically, because we're so anchored in the way that we learn everything, I'm anchored in, oh, well, that's cover 3. But it's really not. You can watch this here. He's going to get that rotation. Notice how he's staying front side. And then they had a game plan where they were cutting the inside. They didn't think Tua could throw outside. This is actually a really good game to watch because they didn't think Tua could throw outside. So this is the second half. They started cutting everything inside. And so what they were doing is they were almost playing this like a 2-man. And then you can see him playing the layer over here so that they can play whoever ends up vertical. And so this is a really nice look at their little system. See how he bends over, and now we can get the bracket on both of the inside guys on that double post. Let's see. This is whip in the red zone. This is 49ers. This is their version of tag pressure. This has become really popular. So I'm interested for the Vikings. You're going to get, so if you're a Vikings fan and you're listening, you're going to get this spammed every third down this year, where you load up the box, and then if I get the slide, I pop out. This is a good coverage rate, and then everybody's playing like some sort of zero or bracket coverage.
Let me ask you about this, because I was watching North Carolina practice. Does that free safety? I mean, there's 2 safeties though, so yeah. I mean, the teams that walk down 6 and have a free safety in the middle of the field, does that free safety have the number 3 receiver when they bring it and they play cover 0?
He's going to typically, if you have a high safety, they're assuming that you're going to max protect it. And so it's almost like that cheat technique that you teach kids in like cover 3, cheat post technique. Like, we're going to shuffle. You're not really going to get to the middle of the field because we might need you in the run game. And that's kind of how you steal a player back in cover 3, especially during like quarterback run game. So if you ever see a guy really high, but everybody's lined up, they're either like playing almost like that old school 46 defense where, hey, if you're a tight end, we're going to put the same linebacker right in your face. We're just going to GM you. So if you block, I just add into the blitz. If you go out on pass, I got you. So it just depends on the structure, and it depends on the lineman. If everybody's in a gap, probably he's stacking somebody that he thinks is going to block. And then, hey, we earn an extra guy in the middle of the field. So it turns into cover 1, even though it's not. And I think that typically, if you see that, that's what it's going to be, especially if he's not like the Greg Williams stuff, like where he's like 20 yards deep, then that is cover 1, because that guy's not covering anybody. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So
like, I asked Chuck Pagano when he coached at North Carolina, Butch Davis's first year, about his max pressures and did he blitz peel when he ended up playing cover 0. And he said no, because guys don't blitz when they blitz peel. So he put the defensive ends on like the running back if he was to release. Do people still do that? Or how do they handle like a back getting out of the backfield? And they have like, it's a 3rd down and they're showing it and they're bringing it cover 0.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys will default to peel, or what you will get is they will take the linebacker and line him up on the edge and put in a hug rush and just say, look, you're going to rush the running back. If the running back goes away from you, we've got another guy on the other side, or you're going to trace back with it. That's kind of been the answer that I've seen, is that you're taking an athlete, you put him on the athlete, let the defensive lineman rush. That way they don't have to worry about any. This stuff right here ends up just being, you're trying to manipulate, especially in empty, you're trying to manipulate the pass protection, trying to get someone free. Wherever they slide, you're going to get a free guy opposite. But I do think in 0 pressures, it's all about look where the guys are. Where are they putting the linebackers? Is a linebacker directly over a running back? Is a linebacker directly over a tight end? Or is he in a position where he can get to him if he were to go vertical? I think that is more of a tell than kind of just peel rushing.
And it makes me think about like when I coached with Mike Spencer, who he was all over. He was the head coach at St. Thomas Aquinas in between George Smith's 2 stops. He had a saying, it was like back, no back, sack. So like you got the back, but if there's no back that goes out, then you get the sack. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, that to me is a lot like the hug rush concept. Is that
hug rush? I'm
going to go hug the back. If he comes to me, then I'm just going to bowl him. I'm just going to bull rush him back in, or I'm going to, if we have a stunt on, I'm going to spill it or box it to create a gap. And then if he peels, I'm literally running to his face. I'm just going to end up running with him. And so then if I feel that it's kind of one of those natural with the D lineman, if I feel that the edge soft, then I can fan back out that way.
Okay.
But yeah, that makes sense to me. The what you said.
Yeah, the back, no back sack. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He said that all the time, man. Back, you got the back. No back out, then you got the sack. Back, no back sack. But man, I don't know if you've ever done a podcast like this, just going down your Twitter, but I mean, you really hit the stuff that you think is important,
Yeah, I mean, everything I try not to. That's the thing, is like I try not to just be a spam poster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything has a purpose. Everything's building on something. It's something that I've seen or I've talked about, or that I see trending. I have a lot of guys, especially at the college level, because they can't pay attention during the season, that follow me and bookmark some of my stuff. And then that's like, okay, well, now I know that's the trend. That's what's going on. So to me, I'm like a free quality control guy. Like, you know what I mean?
Man, no doubt, dude. I mean, yes, I totally agree. How many more do you think we should go over today? I mean, is there like this right here? This is from a 4.25.
Yeah. So this would be,
please go over this.
This is probably, we can probably in here. This is kind of my thought process on things, is We went to kind of how I see blitzes is almost like split field, right? So we have a wedge side, a blitz side. But I also think like I'm really big on being intentional about teaching things. How can we teach things? So we have a Brady path. Everybody knows Brady path. It's B gap pressure, right? Okay, well, how do we build on top of that? Well, we add Baker into it. So Baker is like the spike one rat, the Buddha call, if you're familiar with the Georgia scheme. So that it's spike if you're Aranda. So this is that cross dog pressure. That Mike linebacker is actually blitzing to the running back, and you have a shared rush with the defensive end and the Mike. So if he were to go quickly here, the DN peels with it and the Mike just goes rush. Some people, I call it calves. So if I go NBA pressure, then you know it's a 5-man pressure. Some guys will actually just force fit it because they know either they're not really worried about the back flaring or they're dropping weak or whatever. But this is the same path. In fact, the way that I explain it to the kids, this is the fit structure of this path. If everything were to stay a zone, he would cut it off. It would cut back to the B gap. You would collect it. He would be outside shoulder. So we have an inside shoulder, outside shoulder. And then from there, what if we want to run a hot pressure? Now we already have it in. We just add the defensive end. Now we have a 6-man pressure. You can run eyes pressure behind it, or you can run man pressure behind it. So this is kind of like because I wrote a book, my latest book that I wrote, and I put it out like I think it was after Thanksgiving, kind of goes through. It's kind of like my last, like putting this all together in simple form, not simplistic, but simple forms, install progressions. I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about is installing, right? Everybody kind of, if I give you a playbook, that's awesome, right? Oh, sweet. I got this playbook, but okay, now what do I do with it? Like, how are you teaching it? How are you putting it in? How are you doing this? And doing it, like for me, I wrote this book really off of, and that's kind of what I do. I learn something and then I put it in written form and then I give it out. So that's kind of what I did in this last book is how am I going to teach these complex sims and creepers to kids that really don't know football at all? And how can I make it successful and get it done? And so this is kind of where it ended up. And so I put it all together, and from talking with coaches all over the country, from the high school level to the college level, how are they installing things, teaching things, progressioning things, sequencing things. And so I put that all in a book just so that you can have it, you can like it or not, or hey, this makes sense to me, or I'm going to tweak this. That's the one thing I never want. And that's the thing that I've always never done. I'm not selling a system. I'm not selling a playbook. Now, the quarter system that I run, there's enough out there. You can run that system and hit me up with questions and I'll answer them. That is something that I have put out there. But in terms of just like a playbook, we all have different structures. We all live in different ecosystems. We all have different needs. 1 year you may have to be a 3 down. The next year you need to be a 4 down. Hey, we need to be a 50 front this year. But then the next year, hey, we probably need to just be a G front or a shade front where we're seeing a lot of gap scheme under center. So to me, I never want to get in an always and never situation or where I'm telling you, hey, it's black and white. But I do want to give you information on, hey, I like this stuff. And then I want to be able to, how do I install it? Because that, again, it goes back to no one ever talks about installation. And so I wanted to give people an outlet for that. And in fact, we ended up my first year at life, but really my only year of life, we ended up, I tried to install these, but I didn't have enough time during summer. Again, non-traditional school. We didn't have a summer program where we had kids all the time putting things in, a lot of coaches all over the place. And so we ended up being a 5-man pressure cover 1 team, because at least then I'm plugging gaps and I got men covered. Now, did we win the down every time? No, but we at least were lined up correctly and we at least attacked gaps and we plugged gaps. So that's kind of where the genesis came from. And I wanted to make sure that's there. And this is a good example of how you can take a simple creeper pressure, build it into a 5-man pressure, and then eventually get to a hot pressure, all without not really teaching anything new.
Explain to me what those all mean. Like the hot pressure, I assume, is you're bringing more than they can block, correct? And then what's the creeper and then the sniper and all that mean?
Okay. Yeah. And again, I never want to assume that people know what the verbiage that I use. So I appreciate you asking. A creeper is a replacement pressure, we're bringing someone from one side and we're dropping an on-ball player opposite. So a second or third level defender is blitzing, and where you're going to drop a first level defender off. So another term for it is a replacement pressure.
So you're bringing pressure from one side and dropping from the other.
Right. So we're bringing the will, second level, we're dropping the first level defensive end opposite. So it's a seesaw. I call it seesaw. So it's a replacement pressure.
I've written down more in your talk than I have probably in any other talk. Because I coached D-line in college, but I mean, I'm not a secondary guy. I don't claim to be. But just the stuff that you're saying it's cutting edge. I mean, it's what people are doing.
Yeah, so, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. So that would be a creeper.
Okay, I got creeper.
Creeper is a replacement pressure.
Okay.
Some people, and this is where the semantics gets in, right? This is kind of like, and I'm not going to die on any sword. So some people will just call them simulators or simulated pressures because you're simulating a pressure, but you're really getting 7 in coverage. Like I think.
So that's what I call blitz and bluff, or
blitz and bluff. Yes.
Or we're showing it and then we're bluffing out of it.
Well, that would be a simulator. I'm simulator or a bluff. These are actual like off-ball pressures. I'm giving the illusion pre-snap that I am sending 5 guys, but I'm really going to drop a defensive end. And so I'm really only getting a 4-man rush.
Okay. So what's that called?
That is called a simulated pressure.
Simulated pressure. Simulating that you're going to bring 5, but you're really only going to bring 4.
Right. Or it could be, and so I kind of break them down into 3 parts. Replacement pressures are any kind of, we're attacking the edges of the box. Okay, that's your creepers. We're creeping in, right? Because we're attacking. It's somebody from the edge of the box. It's a second level defender, third level defender. We're creeping down, and then we're going to replace him in the blitz. So it's going to end up, we're blitzing one side, and I'm popping out a first level defender. That's a creeper. That's a replacement pressure. Simulated pressures, that's where, again, it goes back to semantics, and that's where it gets confusing for a lot of people because it's like, well, isn't this simulated pressure? There's 2 different, I consider a simulated pressure anything that attacks like the A gaps. So we're really simulating
like a double A gap mug.
Right. That would be a presentation simulated pressure. We're giving the presentation that there's 6 across, but we're only going to send 4. So that's, and then all the different types off of it. That's why a lot of guys are now, you talk to more and more people, they're just defaulting to everything as a simulated pressure. It's either a presentation sim where we're showing 5, 6, 7, but we're only rushing 4.
Yeah, we got some comments here, man. Like Daquan, he played for me in Richmond, Virginia at Meadowbrook High School. And he said, I live in DFW as well. And I think he wants to get into coaching. So you need to hit coach up. His Twitter's down there at the bottom. You know, I don't know if you're coaching right now, Daquan, but he's a military guy. And then Carl says, coach is knowledgeable as heck. Salute, sir. Yeah, I know. That's why I got him on here, man. He's got to do these guys that have these great Twitters and they spend so much time. They're freaking smart. Like that's why I'm writing this stuff down, man. This guy knows his stuff. So simulated means they're going to attack the A gaps and then bluff out of it.
Yeah, it's let me see if I can, like the Allen pressure in my language. Here's the thing. I'll just make it really easy for everybody. This is really anytime that I'm simulating a rush, but I'm only rushing 4, you can call that a simulated pressure. If you want to get nuanced with it and you want to get into the nitty gritty of it and you really want to get into the semantics and kind of like the bar trick stuff, you know, like, oh, I know this would be right here. This would be a creeper because it's a replacement pressure. I'm bringing from the second level. I'm dropping from the first, but in the family, you can call this a simulated pressure. Like if you go on PFF and you look at their PFF and you look at simulated pressure, they call them all simulated pressures.
Do you have to pay for PFF?
Yeah, you have to pay for the one that the colleges have.
Okay,
yes.
So the reason that they can bring pressure from one side and drop a guy to the other is because the D-line is slanting and a guy's going to slant to where that guy's dropping. He's going to be the contain on that side.
That's why I call it a seesaw pressure.
Seesaw.
So I'm bringing one side, and I think Rex Ryan, I think, is where I got that term from, is where I'm bringing from one side, I'm dropping from the other. So it's like a seesaw. I'm bringing one down and I'm dropping the other, bringing from one down, dropping the other. So it's a seesaw. Again, like I said, a lot of this stuff just depends on what family you're in. or who you're kind of anchored in when you first learned it. Like if you were to go talk to Ron Roberts down at Auburn, I mean, they have like, it's very nuanced because they're kind of the ones that kind of like have really made this stuff popular. So like what's a creeper versus a simulated versus presentation simulated and all that stuff. You can get really convoluted. But if you just want to make it easy, anytime that you're simulating a pressure, whether it's presentation or not, that's a simulator.
So what is presentated? That means they're going to walk up and get that,
so like
double that mug?
Right. So let's say the mic and the wheel. Let's say that we got a jet front presentation. So like we're in threes and double A mug, right? Yeah. But I want to run Brady. The wheel would loop to the B gap. The mic would pop out. That would be a presentation sim.
I see. Who did I see do the Patriots do that all the time?
Yeah, Patriots are a big and really.
Gosh.
Yeah, you know what's funny is it was all invented. It was all.
And they dropped the dude that drops is the guy that's to the running back side.
So, well, it depends on the call. I mean, you can do this. You can bring it to the running back, away from the running back.
Go ahead with what you were going to say about the Patriots.
Well, the Patriots do because a lot of this stuff is just like it's funny because like there's really nothing new in football. So like if you run a 3-4 at all ever, you've been running creepers forever. Like everybody kind of, it's nothing new. It's just we're calling it something. It's marketing, right? That's why I was talking to a college coach one time. He was asking me about stuff, and he's like, "Why are you using that term?" And I was like, "It's just marketing." like it's really all it is, and that's just how I remember it, and so that's what I use it, and that's what's popular, and and so I just use that term because a lot of people know what it is. But yeah, a lot of this stuff. I mean, I go back. I wrote one of my first books I wrote was Hybrids, the making of a modern defense. I wrote it back in 2018, and all this stuff was invented by Arnsparger back in the
Miami Dolphins, and he coached the CFL.
Yes, all of this stuff. In fact,
Don Shula's defensive coordinator.
Yes, and in fact, Dick LeBeau, who is the fire zone guru, the godfather of the fire zone, he actually would go and visit Arnsparger at LSU to learn more and more about the way that he structured it. What LeBeau did is he added the safety into the mix. He added the corner into the mix. Now we're bringing people from the secondary. So he took it to the next level. And so that to me that's where Arnsparger built, the 53 defense. Why is it called 53? Because Bill Matheson was a linebacker and he wore 53. And so that's why they call it 53. And so they would use, I actually put it in the book. I have a drawing of it, like one of the early rudimentary ones. And it's just the wheels coming, like the jack backer is coming off the edge and the Sam linebacker drops. Well, that's technically a replacement pressure. It's a creeper. But he's been doing it forever, and then they ran fire zone coverage behind it, and which is 3 under 3 deep, which is basically because everybody ran cover 3. That's how you modify cover 3 when you lose a guy, right? Yeah. So it's like that to me is the where I like all this stuff, and that's kind of because I am a history teacher. That's what I was, and so the history of it, the learning.
Let me ask you this: since you're a history teacher, I sent a guy a video of Sid Gilman. And he had just spent $1,000 to spend 2 days with this coach that travels around the country charging $1,000. And he said, what good is this going to do me? How's this going to help me win a game? So answer that question if you can. Why learning about Arnsparger or Sid Gilman or any of these guys from the past? How is that going to help you win a game? And is it because guys today really are just doing what they did?
Yeah, I think football is so cyclical in nature that we're going to get these time is a flat circle, right? But the difference is we're going forward in time. So a lot of the things that have come before, what is really popular right now, there's a lot of guys looking up, hey, what I want to learn about the slot tee. I want to learn about the wing tee. I want to learn about gap schemes. I want to learn about different ways of doing things. Well, guess what? Those guys, those are all your old coaches that just retired. They're the ones that know all that stuff and how to defend it. I'll never forget. I didn't even know what wing tee was. I didn't realize that I played against a wing tee team when I was in high school. I had no idea about it. We go to play Frisco in 2015 at Lovejoy, and they are the only wing tee team in the DFW area. The running back had rushed for 2,300 yards up to that point. And I'm like, I have no idea. So I knew my dad was working for a wing tee guru back in Kansas City, and I called him, and we literally installed the game plan that week, and we ended up winning. It was a great game plan. In fact, you can find it on my YouTube. I put the clips up because I was like, I have to share this out, because if I didn't have my dad to turn to, we would have lost the game, because I have no idea how to defend that stuff. And so I think a lot of these offensive coaches, especially with the stories of like Andy Reid, watching these, crazy 1940 tapes to get these ideas for different stuff.
Yeah, the Super Bowl second half was a history of football. I mean, the offense of the Chiefs, I mean, they ran the Vince Lombardi Packer sweep. I mean,
Yeah,
so really you're going to the primary source.
Exactly. And so that's where I think it's these are fun and they're cool. But I will tell you this, and even like guys like, for instance, Ron Roberts at Auburn, he's one of the godfathers of these creepers and sims that are becoming really popular. Him and Aranda, that whole style. They will tell you these are scalpels. These are not finesse. You're running Brady because look. I learned this from Phil Bennett, and I'll go to the Brady, the one at the top right. The best way to defeat power is to run a nose will. Well, what is Brady? Brady is a nose stunt crossing the center, and it's a will blitz into the B gap. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, we're seeing 11 personnel, but they're really trying to run 21 personnel stuff out of it, right? They're trying to run power out of it. So what's the best way to defeat power? Best way to defeat power is a nose will. Brady's going to be a great path for you to use. Right. And so maybe even that week, you don't necessarily need the overlap. You don't need the creeper. You need the 5-man pressure. And I think that's kind of where a lot of these coaches now, they're kind of hanging their hat on a couple of these that they really like. If we're playing gap scheme, we're attacking the B gap. If we're a zone team, we're attacking the A gap. But then what we're doing is we're changing the coverage behind it.
And I would love to get you on a podcast with Coach McNally, because when he starts talking about like the Giants, and he starts talking about like 3 guys to a side, and like the nose has got the C gap, the pirate. He calls it the pirate. Yes. Like he says, Troy, that's the hardest thing. Like, and then like when they would do it, like if run went away, the guy didn't loop. He just went and played the run. It was like all kind of, I was like, wow, dude. I was like, I don't even know how you get ready for all this stuff.
Yeah, the NFL is a different planet, because you have different kind of athletes. You have to solve different kind of problems. And so you can it's a protection league too. Like a lot of times, like run fits are kind of run fits, and then run scheme. It's like mitigating, the one guy, like the Aaron Donald, how are you going to handle him in the run game? But also like on defense, it's how can I manipulate the protection to where I can get my Aaron Donald a one-on-one on your weakest defender.
Mm-hmm. Man, it's a lot. Yeah. Daquan Chapman said, yeah, I added all of his pages just now.
Well, thank you. I'll make sure if he hits me up, I'll definitely make sure to hit him back. And I tried to.
Daquan's the man. So power is the nose will.
Nose will. And I learned that early on from Phil Bennett. He was at Pitt, so he was with Dick LeBeau all the time. They share the same facility. And so
I know Coach McNally gave me Dick LeBeau's phone number to get him on the podcast. And I called him and I texted him. And he texted me back. And I have never been so thankful to get a rejection. I mean, the guy made me feel like $1 million for telling me no. I mean, he was like, well, I really have never done them, and I don't want to open up that can of worms, but thank you very much, and good luck with your season. I mean, dude, I got a text from Dick LeBeau. Look at you. You're smiling right now.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I mean, yeah, but that's Jim McNally just handing out Dick LeBeau's cell number. I mean, you got to love it, man. I mean, I guess with McNally coming to Twitter, I mean, a lot of this stuff he had to, handle with going against Belichick's Giants teams, and he played for Buddy Ryan. And
yeah.
I mean, and Buddy Ryan, Rex Ryan, I mean, yeah, you're right. What family do you come from?
Right. Exactly. And so for me, like I'm based in Jimmy Johnson quarters via Dave Wannstedt and Phil Bennett, put to the context of Art Briles. So the blitz structure, a lot of the stuff that I learned was Rex Ryan, a lot of the Rex Ryan stuff. And so it's just kind of what you learn and then the context you're into it.
Do you know Bob Davidson that just retired from the NFL?
No.
Oh man, you got to meet this guy. He's unbelievable. He was on the podcast, and he was basically Spurrier's one of Spurrier's defensive coaches at Duke in Florida. And then when Wannstedt got the job, he just got in a car and drove to Fort Lauderdale to go to the Miami Dolphins. And Bates was, I guess, had coached with him at Florida. And he was like, I want to talk to Coach Wannstedt about the linebacker job. And he told the story on the podcast, man. It almost made me cry.
Yeah, I'll have to
He talked to Wannstedt for 13 minutes, got back in his car and drove back to Gainesville. Next day, Steve Spurrier comes in, coach. His name is Bob Sanders. My fault, not Bob Davidson.
Okay.
Bob Sanders. Bob Sanders. He went into Bob's because he's got the same name as the safety. Bob. He said, Bob, you want to go coach for the Dolphins? And he's like, yes. He was like, well, Dave Wannstedt just called me, and they're going to hire you. And he went down there. He drove immediately back down to Fort Lauderdale where the Miami's facility was. And he said, I tried to hire like 12 other guys for this job. And you drove all the way from Gainesville and you won it. So he hired him. And then he never left pro football. Bob Sanders.
That's awesome.
Legit.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you my cell number. I'll send it to you on Twitter. Okay. And then you hit me up, and I want to hook you up with Bob, man. Bob is woo, because they were doing all this stuff. Tiger Cat. I don't know if you ever heard of Tiger Cat. The Cover Zero. I call it Blitz and Bluff.
Yeah.
They were doing
that's all like Tiger, all that stuff. Yeah, that's all like the same language. Yeah, I know all that stuff.
Yeah, so he's a part of that, and
that's
he's
awesome.
Retired, man. He just coached with the Bucks with Todd Bowles. I mean, he's been with Arians. He's Bob Sanders is legit. One of my favorite guys. But you're one of my favorite guys.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I mean, if anybody has any questions, ask them. But I mean, is there anything else on your tour do you want to go through before we're done? I mean, we already been doing an hour and 41 minutes.
No, I think that's.
It's a good stopping point.
Yeah, that would probably be it. Just kind of gives you last little layer of stuff. So,
I mean, there's so much. I mean, I could go back and just. I mean, I was writing stuff. The creeper, the simulated. Was there anything after the creeper and the simulated?
No, that's just your 5-man pressures, and you start getting into your different. How are you doing it? Are you?
Yeah. Then you got your hot pressures, which is your 6-man.
Eyes. You're either playing cover one or you're playing eyes.
So what's eyes?
Eyes is just another term for hot. You know, the Narduzzi guys is kind of who made it real famous. They say hot. So you're either squatting if the quarterback looks at you, squat and feel, or you're slinging division if you're away from it. So it's just basically how you play those two underneath players, and then you got kind of like fire zone coverage with the corners and the safety. I know the Saban guys call it eyes because you're looking at the eyes of the quarterback. So okay. I just use both those terms synonymously because it just depends on where you're coming from, what you're comfortable with knowing.
All right, gotcha. Man, is there anything that you would like to leave the clinic with? You know, how can they support you? I mean, how do they buy your books?
Oh yeah, I have a Substack. That's mostly where I do most of my work. MatchQuarters.substack.com. It's about a coffee. The amount of your wife's coffee a month. It's $5.99 a month, or it's $60 a year. I try and do a free article every week, and I drop a heavy content article every week. It's between about 15 to 2,500 words, depending on what it is. And it's a lot of the stuff that we talk about here. You can buy all of my books on Amazon. I'm on all social medias. I know you had my Twitter, but I'm also on Instagram. I'm on YouTube.
So for $60 a year, what did they get?
You get basically an article a week. You get 2 articles a week with a lot of the information here, all the drawings, kind of going more in depth into what I get. It's really just, to me, it's just a way I put so much free content out there. It's just a way you can pay me back.
Yeah.
That's why I don't keep the price real high.
I mean, golly, man, for $60 a year. I mean, dude, like you said, you're a quality control guy. I mean,
the dream job would be like to be assistant to the head coach in the NFL and just be special projects. Like that would be.
Well, that's what Coach McNally was, special projects with the. Yeah. I mean, he studied D lineman for the Bengals.
Yeah, that would be just let me go sit in the dark room and nerd out. That's kind of what I want to do. So.
Well, somebody needs to hire.
Well, I appreciate it.
Cody, I'm a fan for life, dude. I'm a fan for life. Jim McNally keep saying, Troy, you know, you need to get this job or that job. We need to do this. Nah, dude, Cody knows his stuff. All
Thank
right.
you.
I'm a recruiter. All right, Coach, if I showed you my girlfriend, you would say, why are you not in real estate? Why are you not selling used cars? I mean, but thank you, man. I'm going to press in. I want to speak to you a little bit off air.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.